Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here. We're ThinkTech right now, right here on ThinkTechHawaii.com. ThinkTech Talks. Some people think ThinkTech Radio, but hey, we'll explain that away. All right, and Seth Reese joins me today. Hi, Seth.
How are you?
He's a lawyer. He's an IP lawyer. He's a patent lawyer. He's an ICANN man. So let's first get it out of the way about what we're doing here with ThinkTech Radio. We're streaming live on video. We're streaming on Ustream.com, and that's embedded in ThinkTechHawaii.com. Okay, so you can look at it in either place. And anybody who tunes into ThinkTechHawaii.com will see it in a number of places. I mean, the live stream right here, right now. Okay. The second thing is we post on YouTube. Okay, forever. So whatever you say here today, no pressure. It's forever.
All right.
The third thing is we submit this this movie to Olelo 54, which is I guess the public affairs channel for Olelo, and it'll broadcast a couple times, maybe more than that, over the next few weeks. Okay, so you get to be
Memorialized.
more famous. Okay.
More famous.
So Seth and I have known each other since he was 20, and I was 15. And he's been an IP lawyer for about a long time.
A while.
Where'd you go to school?
Well, undergraduate, several places. I went to law school here in Hawaii. I did an LLM at Cambridge in UK. Mm-hmm. I did a master's degree in science before my law degree here at UH.
You have to do that to be a patent lawyer.
You were supposed to have a hard science degree, not a graduate degree.
Yeah, so what was the hard science?
It's biology and chemistry and biochemistry, biophysics.
That's a lot. Biophysics. Wow.
It's a long time ago.
Okay,
So
well,
which
I may have
means
some questions for you.
which means things have changed. There was less to learn then.
That's so true. In the last 50 years, things have changed. We had two researchers from the School of Natural Sciences.
Right.
That's where Tom Apple is going to go to teach soon.
Okay.
In chemistry. And anyway, they were in physics, and what a wonderful show. We talked about antimatter
Okay.
and neutrinos. Physics is so exciting, really.
Yeah, that's well beyond me.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, I wish I'd taken those science courses.
There's still time.
Thank you. I hope there's still time,
Yeah.
Seth. I really do. So, over the years, you and I have talked about ICANN because you have a close proximity with ICANN, which I'm going to let you extend that acronym. But ICANN is all about web domains, which is really important and actually more important all the time. And I guess my question is, what has been your affiliation with them, and what can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so let's take a step back, because ICANN is really a lot more than web domains. It's addressing, and it's the web is many things, but
What does it stand for?
the web or
Oh, the
ICANN,
ICANN.
the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, and so it's hard to pull apart the internet. But if you had to say one thing is the most important, I think it's what ICANN does, because if it didn't do it or didn't do it right, it would fall apart. We'd have nothing. If there's a lot of software on the internet, if that didn't work correctly, well, maybe some of your websites wouldn't work. But the addressing function is really everything. It's how things get to different places and what's behind a website. In other words, how you get to a website, how you get to the correct website, how your email gets to the correct person. So it's really an addressing.
Why can't it be completely
scheme.
automated? Why do you need an organization to do it?
Well, I think it's highly automated, but there's good programmers and policymakers that make sure the automation works. There's new issues coming up. I mean, it's incredible how many issues there are. This organization that started in 1998 to take over from the U.S. government and still trying to take over from the U.S. government, and something happened this year that's kind of quite exciting at that level. But there's just so many issues. In other words, arguments,
misunderstandings.
No, it's just how you do things. In other words, what comes before the dot, what comes after the dot, who gets IP addresses, You know, how you give out IP addresses when there's disputes about domain names, how you resolve them, the government's role in all this. Security is a huge problem on the internet.
People cheating on other people.
And robbing and all sorts of nasty stuff, and
I can't handle that.
they try. Everybody tries to handle it on all the different levels, but the domain name system is very instrumental in attempting to control some of the security problems.
Yeah.
And maybe they can do a better job, and they've been doing. If they hadn't been doing what they're doing, you know, things would be a lot less safe on the internet.
Yeah. So you've been affiliated with them as a member of their international organization?
Yeah, it's a strange organization, and that's one of the things I was hoping to talk about, because what is it? What kind of an organization is? It's very unique. But so it has a governance structure, lots of different bodies, very complex governance structure, and a lot of the structures are simply volunteer groups, and I'm active in one of them.
Are they all lawyers?
No.
Are they
In
all
fact,
techies?
They're a combination of policy people, techies, and lawyers. I think lawyers are a minority, although in some of the governance organizations, not in mine, but in certain ones, they predominate. For example, there's an IP rights. When all this started, it was all the trademarks and the cyber squatting that got all the attention. So there's a lot of lawyers that went in and participated in a certain group called the GNSO. In this area, but in fact, as the organization has grown and the issues have grown, I think there's more non-lawyer issues. The technical issues they're very interesting and very varied, and it takes again, just like physics, it's beyond me. Most of it is beyond me, but it's very interesting, and it's good to try to keep up.
Give me a walkthrough. You know, the conferences that you've attended. Who shows up? I mean, are they from all over?
Yes.
And do they come with agendas? You know, do they come with little picadillos they want to ram through? Do they have, their own needs in this? I mean, are they self-interested?
Yes. Yeah, but for the most part, they are from all over. The internet is kind of historically looked upon as a U.S. Function, because the U.S. Was able to, a lot of it began in the United States with scientists, and so the U.S. government took an active role, and now they're handing off to the international international level. So the meetings that happen 3 times a year, and they happen all over the country. They go to a different geographic area once every 2 years, so they're not concentrated in any one part of the globe. They're attended by all sorts of people, by the tech world, by politicians, by people in the industry, which are the registries, registrars, large commercial companies. The IP lawyers are there for trademark issues. There's nonprofit libertarians there for free speech issues.
This is great.
Everybody, but it's, as I say, it's complicated structure. So, like this time, I went as part of my group, which is the at-large, which is supposedly represent the average internet user, and I'm there on behalf of the IP section of the Hawaii State Bar, because we had made an application to this organization many years ago, and they accepted us. So even though we're a lawyer organization, we're one of the very few lawyers participating in this group. So this particular meeting, we had what's called an at-large summit, which means...
Where was it?
It was in London, and about 3,000 people went, but I had back-to-back meetings most of the week in my groups. I really only had a chance to meet with other at-large people from all over the world. So we were working with a lot of people from Africa, India, Asia. Other meetings I've attended, I've been able to meet with the other factions. So sometimes that would be the commercial users.
We're going to take a short break.
All right.
This is great stuff, though. Nobody knows about this. And when we come back, I want to ask you why you do it.
Why I do it? Why don't you ask how is it relevant to Hawaii?
I'm going to ask that too. That's Seth Reese. He's an attorney here in Honolulu. He's an intellectual property attorney. He's interested in ICANN, ICANN, and we've been talking about that. We'll talk more about that. We'll talk about the issues that come out of it. And gee, there's a lot of things here that you need to know. Really, you need to know. You do need to know. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Yamashita, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence is about identifying where we have a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m.
Okay, we're back. We're live, as before. I want to make that clear, with Seth Reese. He's a Honolulu lawyer, but a patent and intellectual property lawyer. And he's here to talk to us, give us an update about ICANN, ICANN, which again is the
Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers.
which governs a lot of the things you take for granted on the internet, And you may think the internet has no issues, has no dynamic, isn't going anywhere. Oh yeah, oh yes it is. And happily, Seth has some influence, I hope, in that regard. He goes to these 3,000 people meetings in London, and they have these at-large groups that meet and maybe decide some policy.
What
kind of policy did you treat this time?
Well, actually, we were talking about the globalization of the organization, and one of the things that's happening now is the ICANN was created in 1998 to take over what's called the IANA function. The IANA function is the addressing function, how the internet works in terms of directing messages and prompts for websites and the like. So we're in this movement where the U.S. is divesting itself of control of how the internet is going to function or is functioning. And so earlier this year it announced that it was going to transition the IANA function. Instead of having ICANN be a contracting party, it's going to just give it to ICANN to handle it without U.S. oversight. So this is a big thing. And so we've been discussing how that's going to work. And what the U.S. government wants is some kind of confidence that once it passes the roll-on entirely to ICANN, ICANN's going to be accountable and be transparent, and it's not going to be a captive to any organization or government, that it's going to be representative of basically everybody in all countries.
That's very unique, isn't it? I mean, you can think of another organization like a grassroots organization comes together and actually, controls this huge instrument, huge enterprise,
right.
All on a voluntary, right? It's all on a voluntary basis.
Well, I mean, most of the participants are voluntary, or they're salaried employees of an interested company or organization. But it is interesting, and so right now, ICANN is a California nonprofit and always has been. There's many proponents who want it to stay that way, and there's also many who feel like it can't be a true
in the U.S.
It can't be a true international organization if it stays a California nonprofit. So there's a lot of discussions. It's already very global in the sense that its meetings take place all over the world. It has just opened an office in Istanbul, so it tries to have offices in all geographic areas. Its staff is located all over the world, and its proceedings are translated in many, many languages.
And the people who come, do they speak many, many languages? I mean, are there simultaneous translations?
Everybody but the North Americans. Yeah, there is simultaneous. It's interesting because they have a huge budget for language. I mean, just an extraordinary budget. So every time you register a domain name, probably 12 cents of your registration fees goes into translations, so they translate most of the proceedings into the UN languages and Russian. I think they just started Russian, but not everything. But anything of significance is translated.
So it's not, you know, why you've been involved for what, at least 5 or 6 years by my count. Yeah, at least 5 or 6 years. Why? I mean, why do you follow this around? Is it curiosity? Is it professional interest? Is it you know, sort of a global volunteerism? What is it?
It's not global volunteerism. I don't enjoy volunteering that much. It's because it's interesting. It's exciting. There's an opportunity to follow global policy as it's being made. It's very hard to understand these issues and keep up with these issues unless you participate to a certain degree, just because there's so much information and it's hard to reach that information. The international aspect is exciting. Hawaii is you know, fairly insular, and it's hard to.
We're trying to stop that.
I understand.
Stamp it out.
And this is an example of how we are. I've been to several meetings. I've been to maybe 5 or 6. I've only once met somebody at a meeting from Hawaii.
Really?
And I'm sure there are other
you know
people.
that person?
I did not know they were East West Center Communications fellow. A lady from Korea, I don't remember her name. And so I think there is a lack of participation from Hawaii, but the domain names can hold a great value to the people in Hawaii. For example, everybody's applying for new GTLDs. Some of the possible, that's the word after the dot.
Chevy car.
Right, dot, something dot something. So in other words, the French, there's a fellow on the ICANN board who's French, and he was complaining about how nobody from France applied for the dot VIN, which is wine in French. So he's upset because the Americans applied for .VIN, the French didn't. Well, you know, there's .HI and there's .HAW and there's .HAWAII and Hawaiian. Those are things that could be applied for. And it's very interesting about if they are applied for, who should that be, and whether that should represent the state's interests, the people's interests.
So there are limitations. In other words, you say VIN, you only want a vintner to be qualified, or some. I mean, are there limitations on who can have the VIN, or who can have the Hawaii?
There's all these procedures in place to protect against the wrong groups taking the wrong ending for the wrong purposes.
And thus misusing them somehow. Yeah.
Perhaps. So the two most interesting debates lately, because there's been 2,000 new endings that have been launched or in the process of being launched, are .Patagonia and .Amazon. Those are two large commercial brands, but they also reflect geographic areas. And the question is, if you give it to the commercial brands, what happens if the people of those geographic areas later decide, oh, they wish they had them? There's only one. Once it's gone, and I look at it as a global resource like the space or the oceans. You know, it shouldn't belong to just the first guy who asks. The interesting thing is Patagonia, the commercial enterprise, withdrew their application in the face of opposition.
Oh, well, good for them, though.
Amazon has not, but Amazon has not. It's not.
You know Amazon.
but there's been a great amount of debate, and I find it interesting. But those debates one day will also happen around .HI and .Hawaii, probably. And if the people here aren't prepared to engage logically in those debates,
then others will make that decision, and we here won't have much to say about it, except through you.
not through me. But so the message here is that there should be greater interest and greater participation, and people should be giving some thought into how to share those resources, because they probably will belong to us in some form, whether us government, us ethnic people, us communities.
But you kind of, you know, I mean, when I go for, a domain name, I just knee-jerk, .com. It's all .com for me, even if it costs a couple of bucks more or less. I mean,
.com's less.
Less, okay. Well, why? I mean, what's happening in the world, right, that we are so interested in these new extensions? And what will happen? I mean, what's the sea change here?
I don't know, because I've always predicted that there wasn't going to be sufficient economic interest in all these endings to support them. It cost about $2 million to get an ending, because you need a lot of technical expertise. The application to ICANN costs several $100,000. There's just a huge amount of investment. It's
So if I wanted Patagonia, because I am Patagonia, make clothing, okay? And I come to ICANN and say, well, I want Patagonia, I really like that, and that would be great for me, you know. Somebody's going to say, wait a minute, you're going to say, wait a minute, geographical area, you really can't have that. Now, what's my appeal? What do I say? I don't agree with him. What do I say?
Well, there's a guidebook which is several hundred pages thick, which talks about the procedures to apply for a new ending. There are various objection mechanisms, including independent objector who's salaried simply to take objective views. There are international arbitrators who decide disputes.
Oh, arbitration on that. No.
Well, that's part of the procedure, and it's interesting because there's these things called community-based objections, which are based on a community saying
It's like a country. It's like a constitution.
Yeah.
It's like all this methodology.
and
Incredible.
the decisions that came out of the international arbitration body were extremely inconsistent, and they weren't satisfying because it's the first time anybody in the world had tried to implement and interpret this particular procedure. It's a brand new judicial-like procedure, quasi-judicial procedure. So there's bodies. WIPO decides domain name disputes. They were also deciding trademark-based objections to the new GTLDs. Those were very satisfying because they had a body of law, and their panelists were trained to have. So there was consistency, and everybody was satisfied. The ones based on the community-based objections,
That's
kind
the
of,
one you were just talking about.
yeah, they were kind
Patagonia
of
would be
all over the place. I don't know if Patagonia went through one. I was involved in .health. A number of entities applied for .health, and my organizations helped put forth an objection based on .health being promoted as a commercial ending.
professional. It was professional, really.
So yeah, so there's an international professional doctors organization or health organization didn't want certain applicants to get that ending.
Who would use it as a scam, maybe?
Who would not be sufficiently ethical, or not necessarily a scam, but maybe it would be
Fine
overly
line.
commercial.
Yeah. So what happened?
The objection did not succeed. But that was it.
So now it's open. I can go get health.
I believe, well, it's on its way or it's available, I'm not sure. I don't know if you can, but somebody got it. And whether you can participate in that would depend on the policies of the registry that got the .health.
You know, you mentioned arbitration, Seth, and I mean, to me, I remember that was my first contact with ICANN, to know that if you had an argument about a domain name, if there was a trademark issue, you know, sort of an underlying claim under trademark law, or other complaints and disputes, you could go to ICANN and you'd have this really, really well thought out arbitration, international arbitration, that worked swell, right? I mean, that's.
I just did an opinion today. I'm
really?
a panelist.
Oh, you're a panelist. You're an arbitration panelist.
So,
Can you
so
talk about
I'm
it,
part of
or
that.
is it a big secret?
No, it's not a secret. I've done. I've been a panelist for maybe almost 10 years, and that's a paid position. It's not paid very much, and so you're part of a group of several hundred international professionals who decide disputes. It works very well because it's low cost, streamlined. You get a decision within 2 months of filing, and they actually have just started even a quicker dispute, because what's happened is so many of these disputes are slam dunks. And so it's not as much fun being a panelist as it used to be, because at the beginning there were some really close cases. Now, the great majority of cases are slam dunks.
Because what? Precedent? Because these
No,
things have been decided
no, it's
before?
because most of the cases are like Viagra.com, that doesn't belong to, the imposters. In other words, they're just people are finding new ways of registering.
On the other guy's
and
name.
so most of them are just black and white cases.
So what's the rule on that? So I see that Viagra's a big company, a lot of money, all that stuff.
It's a brand.
Brand.
The brand.
Brand. Okay. Trademark. Has the rights.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Okay,
that
so-
probably
and
a
so I don't-
pharmaceutical company owns the brand,
Sure, and there's lots of money there.
right.
But I noticed that they haven't registered the name. So quick like a bunny, I registered the name Viagra.com.
Yes.
Okay, and Viagra is all ticked off about that, and they come to the arbitration panel. What guides you? I mean, if I mean, suppose my cousin's uncle's brother, his name was Viagra, Joe Viagra.
Well, then,
Am I gonna? Do I have a claim?
well, it's interesting if your cousin's uncle's brother did the registration, and there's a possibility that they could hold on to it. I think ICANN did two things very well at the beginning. One, once they developed this policy, before the policy was developed, people have to understand that companies like McDonald's were paying like $2 million to get their domain names back. It was ridiculous, and people were saying, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with registering a trademark as a domain name. There's no law on it. Well, there was law. It's just that the courts hadn't gotten around to telling us that, and so people were paying lots of money, and so ICANN very early on came out with what's called a policy, and it's like a law, but it's called a policy, and
It governs the arbitrators.
it's basically saying, you know, if you register and use in bad faith based on these criteria, then you lose your domain name, and right now I think it's $1,500 filing fee, and you know, it's a 15-page brief, which for the law profession is inexpensive compared to everything else, and so it provided a solution. The other thing that ICANN did very, very well at the beginning is to create competition, so that instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a domain name, we pay 10 to 30
Oh, you mean the people who can issue them?
to
But
register.
they have to be
right?
licensed by ICANN to do that.
Yeah, there's resellers, but yeah, you basically have to get accredited.
Yeah.
But those are the two things that ICANN did very well, very early, and then everything else it's done, you know, and it's really complicated. So you know, we got to give them credit. It's done very slowly and not necessarily as well, but it moves slowly, but I would say probably fairly wisely, because there's just so much debate and so much input.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's holding together. I mean, you got to say about the internet that it is apparently to an ordinary person, it looks pretty well managed. It's under control. You
It
know,
hasn't been down for a day, has it? People's websites have, but yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you one question before we take our next break, and that is this. You know, you're a lawyer. you have a certain range of activity in the law, different kinds of cases, different kinds of resolution of cases. So you have ICANN here, and you're watching this system, which works pretty well. I mean, it's kind of remarkable that it does, and it's been invented for a brand new thing, the internet, and the systems for the resolution of disputes, they work pretty well. Do you think that some of these, like 60-day decisions, 15-page brief, $1,500 to file, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good way to go for lots more than just domain name disputes. You know, could that system work in other situations? I don't have to have a hearing. I don't need witnesses. I don't have to have drama. Just give me my 15 pages and I'll abide by the decision you make. What about that for other things?
Maybe. I mean, you know, it's interesting because people have likened it to, I guess eBay has arbitration, various commercial websites have arbitration. I'm not very familiar with them, but I think, you know, the model. Well, there's a few things about the, it's called the UDRP system, the domain name dispute system. One thing is there's no money. You can't win money, you can't lose money. All you can do is get a domain name canceled or transferred. So that takes a lot of the, I don't know, the expense out of it, because you can't play games with money like you do in commercial litigation. The other thing is it's narrow. You know, it's a narrow area, and so the policy is maybe 8 pages. You know, a 8-page law. You know, that's not going to work for everything. But I think, and the other thing is it's international. It works very nicely international. You know, there's so many aspects of the internet that are international. You have to play on an international level for certain types of internet disputes, and this is one of them. And so you got to keep it simple and straightforward to be able to bridge the gap between so many countries.
It sure feels like a good system, though, and it sure feels like there's precedent in there. One last question I got to ask you. if the arbitrators make a decision about something, you know, some sort of between the policy points, so that they're actually making new policies, they're actually making law. Okay, is that published? Can I go look and see the basis on which you describe?
You know,
Can I, as a litigant in another
Yeah.
case, cite to what you did?
everything's published. So the decision I wrote today will be up in a few days. Well, maybe a week, because the other thing is we're not allowed to make law. If we write a decision, the staff over there will tell us, will ask us to rethink. We're not supposed to invent. So we're supposed to stick to the policy and the precedent. So we are making precedent in interpreting the policy, but we're not supposed to make policy. It's
Okay.
hard. But the other, it's an interesting question because the policy is good, sound, logical law. And so I think, and I'm not sure, but I'm fairly confident that domestic case law has on occasion referred to UDRP decisions as an indication of what would make sense.
Stop
And
those courts.
even I believe, and somebody will call in right if I'm wrong, I believe that the part of the Lanham Act that is aimed at cyber squatters, the way the Lanham Act is the U.S. trademark law, was actually enacted after the UDRP and uses some of the same concepts. So our U.S. statute against cyber squatting actually adopts some of the concepts from the ICANN
Great.
policy.
I'm beginning to understand why you like it so much. That's Seth Reese. He's a member of ICANN. Is that the right way to put it?
No, I'm a member of one of the governance committees.
Okay. All right. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
And he's a lawyer here in Honolulu. He's an intellectual property lawyer, and he has a good time in these arbitrations and conferences. I'm Jay Fidel. This is Think Tech Talks. We'll be right back after this short break.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
It's the
Aloha.
Internet Governance Forum.
All right. We're talking about the future now. This is Seth Reese. He's my guest today on Think Tech Talks. We're talking about ICANN. We're getting an update on ICANN. ICANN. What was that again?
Internet, if you ask me enough times, I'm going to get it wrong. Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers.
Okay. It's really important, and it's great to know about it. And it has the feeling of optimism and internationalness, and cooperation from around the world. It's a great governing body. And you almost think that there ought to be more governing bodies like that handling more international issues. I really admire that. Anyway, so I was going to ask you, what's the future in all of this? Where is it going from your point of view? And then you mentioned something that was a good example of
IGF.
that. IGF.
So,
What is IGF?
so the question is, who governs the internet? And then the question is it going to be governed, or is it governed by governments, or is it governed by something that's not governments? And there has been a bit of a tussle in this area. So back, I don't know, in the maybe about 7 years ago, the UN created this thing called WSIS, which is an Internet Governance Forum.
Can you extend that, please?
No, I don't know what it stands for, but
WSIS, okay.
it's like
You heard it
you
here,
can find
WSIS.
it on Wikipedia.
Okay, how do you spell it?
Even if you don't get it right, Wikipedia will send you to the right place.
How do you spell it?
I think it's WYSIS.
That sounds close enough.
Yeah. Here, there's a WGIG and a WSIS. A WSIS, there was a WGIG and a WSYS.
It's all about acronyms.
And it started in 2005 in Tunisia. But so the UN has had a role in having a debate on internet governance. So nobody is trying to govern the internet, or everybody's trying to govern the internet, but there's not a clear structure like there might be for the law of the sea or something like that. So of course the UN is governments. Those are governments, and the internet is distributive. It's not centralized, which means the way it functions end to end, person to person, portal to portal, not necessarily from country to country, which means that the governments have to take some assertive action to actually control it, because if they don't, then the internet is controlled by the users. So that really creates a very interesting dynamic from an international governance point of view. So far the governments really haven't regulated the internet very much, but there's been threats that they may. And it's come from various things like the ITU, which is the Internet Telecommunications Union that governs, it's a treaty for our telephones and telegraphs, and
That's international, yeah,
Right.
out of Europe somewhere.
it's a UN organization in
UN,
Geneva.
okay.
Yeah, and so the threat there is that if they regulate it like that, then governments could shut down the internet or decide what comes through, which they do a little bit, but not to a great extent. So what's been happening is the idea of governance at the grassroots level. And what happened this spring, and I think this is important, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it, is something called Net Mundial. It happened in Brazil, and it was a Brazilian initiative. And Brazil has been one of the big players on the internet, kind of doing something that's not Western, saying let's do it a little differently. And what happened there is it was a debate about internet governance, but not on the UN level with just governments, but on the grassroots level, which means all stakeholders, me and you, the internet companies, the Amazons, the software companies, the telecommunications companies, and governments. And what was very unique there, and I wasn't there, but everybody's talking about how wonderful it was. The governments went to the forums and picked up a microphone and talked just like you would.
Just like an ordinary member.
They didn't have any higher kind of
That's great.
state.
That is great.
And so what it's called is called multi-stakeholder equity, where everybody is treated the same, including governments. And so that's a very interesting model, and we don't know if it's going to work, but it was applauded, and if it's going to work, it can only work with something like the internet because of its engineered user to user.
Yeah, but I mean, if one country decided, hey, we really care about this issue, and we're going to shut you down or something, it wouldn't matter if they came and acted like everybody else at an ICANN meeting, because they'll shut you down as a matter of physical force. So it remains to be seen, I think, how this plays out.
But it's not as easy to do it on the internet as it is on everything
To
else.
shut you down, you mean?
Right.
Not anymore, because it gets its way around.
Well,
as
it always
grows.
was distributive, and I think there's governments who have tried to shut their populations
Chinese.
down. Chinese, although the Chinese were very instrumental in the London meeting, and apparently they're implementing some DNS security and cooperation with ICANN. So somebody in ICANN, the new CFO, was apparently very instrumental in getting China to kind of embrace some of the
that's
security
great.
agendas. So.
Great, I'm happy to hear that. I was going to ask you about two issues that sort of flow out of this, from what you were saying. One is, is ICANN interested in stopping government from meddling with the internet? I mean, do you affirmatively go, maybe you've already answered this, but you go to China and you say, China, don't do that, stop that. And you try to negotiate or put pressure on them, and hopefully succeed. And maybe it's very, subtle, gentle, but maybe it has an effect. I mean, is there a process? Is there sort of a groundswell of don't mess with the openness of the internet?
Yeah, I think there's the great majority of people who participate in ICANN is against government interference and in favor of net neutrality.
Oh, I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's also a recognition that if you go too far, governments are going to stand up and say, no, no, no.
If who goes too far, in what?
If the liberal aspects, the influence, in other words, if you tell governments you cannot do anything under no circumstances,
see.
then people will
You'll
the
see.
governments will. So there's a recognition that there has to be a balance. There has to be sensitive to government needs, that particularly in areas of things like political and cultural and religious sensitivities. I think it's interesting because France has had this, one of the earliest internet cases where it was France law about the Holocaust, that I think a California company was sanctioned in France for having Holocaust items on a website. So Islamic countries are sensitive to slander against their religion. These are areas that require some sensitivity, that the idea that nothing can be censored under any circumstance.
Can't be completely.
Child pornography. I mean,
I can't get involved in that. I mean, in these things, or is it on a complaint basis?
No,
Are
I
there
don't.
ICANN police out there
No.
looking for this?
No. The ICANN police are looking for registrars who don't follow their accreditation agreements.
Okay.
But ICANN is involved in investigations because their machinery to identify who owns what is part of ICANN, so they have to have policies that will allow law enforcement to track down bad guys.
Yeah. I have one last question, then we're going to have to close it down. And that is, how do you get to be a member, a representative, someone who can attend the ICANN conference of 3,000 people in London? How does that happen?
Anybody can go.
Really?
The nice thing is you can go for free because all you do is tune in on the internet. All the meetings are public and internet broadcast. So, I don't know if you like being up at 2 in the morning, and frankly, I usually don't do it because it takes time, but everything is open, everything's available. To actually participate like I do, most of the organizations are open to volunteers, so you can simply say, I'm interested. We have certain voting rights in the at-large, so we had to go in and apply as a group to get accredited, and that's not hard, but it's time. It takes commitment.
Somebody
time,
has to
commitment.
pass on you and say,
Right.
you're accredited.
Right. Yeah, for what we do, but there's other things where you can fully participate without any accreditation, just by being there or by making yourself heard on the internet.
So I could have gone with you. I mean,
You could.
unaccredited to London. And
we would have had fun.
we would have had fun.
The beer was good.
I'm sure it was. That's Seth Reese, a local lawyer, an intellectual property lawyer, a patent lawyer, and a qualified member of ICANN, which is something, ICANN, which is the international.
ICAAN.
ICANN.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the International Corporation of.
Assigned names and numbers.
Of course. Thank you, Seth.
Sure.
We'll see you next time.